Hi.
Hello, welcome.
So sad. I came home from work, went upstairs to get ready, and I left all my materials, everything at school. I was like,
No.
my old bag that I had prepped through the day. I was like, oh, I want this one. Oh, I want that material. Oh, I want this.
Oh, no.
It's at school at my desk, right at the foot. And I was like, so I'm going to be an observer today.
Well,
that's the kind of day that I've had. Oh my God.
If you happen to have paper, like scrapbooking paper, you can do the same thing with paper.
No, I don't do scrapbooking. I have a bunch of paper, but that's I'm just so let me get my one dog up here. Let me go upstairs and see if I find anything else. Are we waiting? How many more people are we waiting for?
I don't know. We had like 75 registered. We usually end up with about 20 something. So
all right.
I figure we'll wait till about 10 after and see how it goes.
All right. Well, I'm going to have some materials here. I'll see what I can scrap together. And but I just didn't want to miss it. I want to watch and learn.
Me too. I've been so excited about this one.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you always have sponsor. I mean, sponsor. We get fabulous art teachers in, and
thank you.
I love it.
I stalk the ones that make me the most interested and the most happy to look at their stuff. And Dawn's been a trooper. Thank you.
You can't see it, right? Because it's
yeah, she can't see it.
All right.
Because it would be an echo, right?
I'm gonna look around and see what I have.
Welcome everybody. If you're just joining us, gonna wait a couple more minutes.
Art teachers from New York.
Oh, stop. How do I get back to it? Is it so long? Yeah.
Prosecution.
Yeah,
and
I'm going to take notes too. This must be a rough month. Small group tonight. Is everybody tired?
So tired.
Yeah.
I was like, then I was like, oh my God, I don't even have my materials in my bags left. but I was like, I'm just gonna join and listen. Well, yeah.
Hi, Tina. Welcome. I have tried to get to 3 other different webinars this week and missed every single one. And it's been just kind of nonstop. So I haven't even had time to prepare. So I will be taking notes and reviewing also for making at a later date. I think the kids are getting crazy before Thanksgiving. Are you finding that in your schools too?
Our kids have been crazy since day one.
Well, yes. Just more crazy since
They don't know how to act.
No, they really don't.
I'm at a high school. We had a fight the first day.
Oh my God.
The third day we had what they call a May Day. The fights, there's so many they had to call for backup police.
Oh my gosh.
And then yesterday, the same thing. We had to go on lockdown. The fights were, I think there was 6 fights throughout the day.
That's crazy.
And the lockdown was because the first fight was cousins. So then all the parents and aunts and uncles showed up in the office and they were screaming and yelling. So they had to lock down the whole school.
Oh Lord.
I was at home and my phone was blowing up. I'm like, well, this is good. I'm not there.
Oh my God. We had a fight today in our building, and one of our wonderful teachers tried to jump in and break up the fight, and she got knocked out and had to go to the hospital. So now I got an email earlier this evening that we're having an emergency union meeting to go over, I guess, protocols and whatnot, on what we should and shouldn't do when something like this happens, I guess, to protect ourselves. So I have to run off of this meeting to go to that one. It's just the party's never ending this year. It's
Well,
just,
we don't have a union per
You
se.
don't?
No, not in Virginia.
did not know that.
And our stance is you have to tell them to stop and you have to call for help. That's all you have to do.
Well, that's what most of us would do anyway. Some of us would try to jump in and break it up just because it's our natural inclination. But I'm kind of at that age where it's like, no, I'm kind of done with that stuff. I don't want to get hurt, and it's not my problem.
Well, we've had a cop get a concussion, a cop with a broken arm, a teacher that had to get total knee replacement,
Oh my
another
God.
teacher that had knee surgery.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, we had in an elementary school, the principal got beat up
Well, we had
A
an assistant
principal.
principal.
by a 5th grader. Yep.
Wow.
What kind of a kid
Right.
beats up a
Right.
principal? Oh my God.
Well, it's a regional program, which is kids who are emotionally disturbed, have emotional issues, and they're housed in. It's a program that's throughout Howard County, and typically the program works great, but I've found that as the years gone on, there are some angrier and angrier kids who come in and more violent. They have no concern for property,
Right.
I mean, this is elementary,
It's amazing.
kindergartens haven't heard words like this, and they're running through with these vulgar words. It's sad. It's a pitiful state.
They're smoking pot at school every day. And according to the police, when they bust them at school, the courts just put them in a 1-hour drug program and let them go.
1 hour. Oh, great.
Oh, bonus.
They don't get any punishment.
God. I keep saying, I joke around with my colleagues that maybe they should just install a gummy vending machine for the teachers so we could all just be high and there's no problems. We're all happy at the same time.
I had a kid start a fire in my room
Oh my God.
last week.
That's crazy.
They took him out of one of my classes. I had him twice. It was deemed that his ADHD was the reason he started the fire, so he got to come back to school 2 days.
Well, of course, that's what they would say to get him back in the building.
We've had fights every day, every
Oh.
day. I'm at a high
Definitely.
school in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Oh my
It's
God.
crazy.
We've had occasional fights, but never like this. Every day there's fights.
Every day.
How many,
And we,
how many staff absences do you guys have a day? I'm curious.
Oh, a lot.
Tons?
20. Well, I say 20. We probably have over 10 unfilled.
Yeah,
Really?
we always have like anywhere from 5 to 10 that people are in elementary schools, they're out, and then at least 5, that are unfilled. And then we have to take some planning time to fill it in if they, because they're calling us up. Well, do you have this time? I'm like, well, what about prepping for these classes? I can't, that's my prep time. I can't,
Well,
who's going to get the material ready for these kids?
Our school was a social emotional learning program.
Yeah.
So yesterday they extended that program, cut all the other classes short, extended the social emotional stuff, which all got cut short because we were on lockdown because the fights were so violent. And I'm like, I think y'all need to put your resources somewhere else than trying to talk to these kids about social emotional stuff, because they don't know how to act.
No.
And they're pushing AP now, and I'm like, these kids, I have half my kids read at a 3rd grade level, and they want us to push AP everywhere.
I don't know how you teach any content when discipline takes more than half of your time with each class. There's just no way. It's like I'm so exhausted from just trying to get the kids under control to listen that by the time I do that, there's 10 minutes left to do anything, and then it's wrap up and clean up and move on, and they don't remember anything from one day to the next. It's just.
I spent an hour of my planning period today
Bring me a book on the
writing
table over there.
emails home.
Yeah,
The book.
I did that today. Most of
And
my afternoon.
I have 7 preps.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Not for every day.
I have 6.
In one day?
Oh,
Well,
no.
we're on a block, so at least they got that right.
Okay.
Unmuted, am I?
On odd days, I have
If I wasn't,
two
back
stacked
down.
3s and 4s and 5s, and I have an art 1, and then I have duty. On even days, I have 2 stacked ceramic 1s and 2s, and a craft class,
Okay.
and then my planning,
Wow.
and then once a week I have SEL.
We have to work that into all of our stuff one way or another. Yesterday, it was my principal's turn to have the school visited by our superintendent's office. So she came around and she's like, please do, something. She told me I was on the list to be visited. I'm going to be visited the second classroom of the day. Make sure it's focused on SEL and questioning and this and that and the other. And so, I told the kids, this is what's happening. We're going to put on a show. Let them all see what they want to see. Please don't embarrass me. And they pulled it off. And the very next day, it was like back to normal mayhem. It's like, if you can do this for this person, so we don't all look like crazy people, why can't you do it on a daily basis? I just don't understand. I don't get it.
There's nothing better than a 7th period art 1 that is 90% 9th grade boys.
Oh, wow. Off the wall, right? Completely off the wall. All right. It's 7:18. I think we should get started. Fair warning, this is being recorded.
Je suis allée pour acheter le matériel.
I'm going to Marie. Okay. Welcome everybody, and I'm so happy to be able to tell you that we have Dawn. Is it Vass or Vass?
Bass.
Vass. This evening, master quilt genius and creative person, teacher and artist, and all around just inspiration, because I see her stuff all the time on Facebook. Excuse me. And as I tell you guys all the time, I stalk only the best on Facebook to get them to share their fabulousness with us. And even with a cold or a severe bronchial thing, I'm so happy that you are here with us. So I'm going to hand it over to Dawn, and I hope you guys all enjoy this session. Where did you go? Here you are. Spotlight you for everybody. Here we go. All right.
Awesome.
There you go.
Wow.
I'm going to quickly go through some of my examples. Unfortunately, a lot of them, or fortunately, I sold a whole lot at the conference. So I'm just now remaking, and some of these didn't sell. So I have a bunch of the ladies. This is all done collage, just like you would do with paper, except for I use fabric. I kind of freeform it. I can tell this is one of the earlier ones because she has the eyeliner, and then I started getting just a little more comical in these. If you put glasses on them, it's like the last thing you do, but I'll get into that later. I did a lot of flowers. They're very popular. I have shown you the different styles on how easy it's put together. Again, it's just collage, and I'm just cutting out pebble shapes and then basically gluing them together. This one's in a vase. I don't want to pull the camera back too much because then I won't get it close enough again. These are your cone flowers in a field. These are my poppies. And so that is pretty much just a selection of what I've done. I started a smaller flower one today just to show you the basic steps. When I do one with the table, I just stitch the pieces together first. This, I put the webbing on the back, and it's got a paper base. And then I cut it out and pull it off. Of course, like it's almost like everything. You put down your background first, and then I've ironed on my leaves. I deliberately don't iron all the way to the edge sometimes, because sometimes I like to fold them back, and then when I'm finished binding it, I have some break the plane. So that's why this is loose, because I'm probably going to break the plane on some of these. So then all I would do is, again, I cut out these real quick. They have the stuff on them. I would arrange it, peel the paper off. When I get it the way I want it, probably want to bring this down to cover up this. And then I peel off the back and press it. And I'll work on that later on. My little poppy, again, I'll probably put him up here. So I have a little iron and I have a big one. So again, I just peeled off the stuff. You can see the glue. I don't use the same iron for clothes as I do for this, but
Oh, that's so cute. It's a tiny little thing.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they cost more than the big ones, but
Of course.
but it's so handy, especially when I'm doing stuff. So sometimes I don't have the stuff go all the way to the ends, like this one still curls up, but I don't worry with it because I free motion quilt over the entire thing. I also buy, and of course I touch the iron to this. I also buy the hem tape sometimes because it's the last minute I say, oh, I need to add something and there's no paper on it. You can just kind of peel and stick this to hold it in place. Because that's basically all you're doing. It's like I can just put a little piece here and press it to hold that in place long enough to stitch it. I have used a glue stick. They sell a glue stick for fabric. But honestly, I think it's the exact same thing as a regular glue stick. And only use that if you're just tacking something and you plan on stitching. If you're never going to stitch, you got to make sure that your paper covers the whole back. But like I said, I always stitch on top of it. So this fusing is just to keep it in place while I work.
Is your background one piece with the other, with the table pasted on top of it?
On this one, I stitched it.
Oh, okay. Okay, got it.
Sometimes I don't. And sometimes when I'm doing these, I just have blocks of color and I leave the inside white. I mean, undone.
Uh-huh.
Just because you cover up most of it anyway. But I do that more with the faces. So here's my background. I do have my stuff here because I'm going to show you what I end up doing. So this is ready to go. This is a little more busy than I usually do my faces, but I'm going to try something new. So I'm going to cut out my head. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect because by the time you put hair and everything on it, if you want it symmetrical, you know that you can fold it. So here's my head. Now, before I iron it on, and if I'm worried that you're going to see through the face through the background, this one I'm not too worried about. But what I do is, this pen, I've never found it in the store. I get it online. I'll show you the magic trick it does in a minute. But you can use chalk or anything. So what I do a lot of times is I cut out this head. Just so you won't see the background through the face. Because a lot of times your face is a lighter color.
Oh,
Not always. You can
Tracy's asking, what's the name of the iron?
This one is a Drit, so I got it at like Joann Fabric.
Okay. D-R-I-T?
If you go D-R-I-T-Z. If you go to Amazon, you can probably find other brands. So this might be a time I use my binding.
Do you ever draw your stuff out first, or you just free form it or free?
Sometimes I do. And that's where you can either draw it on the back. I've gotten to the point where I free form it a lot of times.
Okay.
Because I did a dog not too long ago. So I did make a pattern on paper and I did more drawing than I usually do.
Mm-hmm.
So since I'm working on the webbing and I need this to kind of stay in place, that's where I use that hem stuff just to keep my background in place. And then now when I peel this off, it's going to stick to my webbing or my filler. But let me show you what this pen does. It completely disappears with heat.
Oh, magic. And what's the name of that pen?
I got it on Amazon and I said heat erasable pen, and it came up. I went to the quilting store and they didn't have it. They only had water removal. So I made a little mistake. If you make a mistake on this, you can usually peel it apart. Sometimes it peels apart better warm, but I forgot my neck. So
Can you move up your
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
we're missing there we go. Thank you.
yeah. So I'm just gonna, and again, my neck might have shoulders if she's gonna have something strapless, or I might just build the shoulders separate. So there's my neck. I peel off my paper.
What kind of fabric is that with the backing? Like you have fabric that already has a backing?
No, I already ironed on the stuff. So
Oh.
I used the
So you're adding an adhesive to all the fabric.
yeah, I do it. This is the Wonder Under or Heat Bond or something like that. I use light or feather light because it's just to hold it in place. It's not going to be permanent without stitching. So what I do is, you can see, is I pre-iron a bunch of it on my fabrics.
Okay.
Only time I would use this or glue is if I cut something small at the last minute and I just need to hold it in place until I get to something. So you can see it's got a sheen on it, and that's the glue. Because when you just peel off the paper, you iron on the paper, and then when you peel it off, you have your iron-on adhesive.
Okay, can you just use this? Would you recommend, like, for middle school kids who are not always well behaved? I wouldn't want to use an iron or anything. Can we just use glue just to?
You can use glue, but unless they're stitching, it's not going to be permanent.
Okay.
So I was telling somebody earlier, I'm going to do this with scrapbook and paste paper later on with my crafts kids, and just use glue and Mod Podge.
Okay. So I mean, you wouldn't use fabric, is what you're saying.
Not if, well, my high schoolers, I would let them use the iron.
Okay.
But as an alternative, I would use paper.
I think if you used like a white glue, it would seep through your fabric. And
Gonna seep through. Your glue stick isn't going to be permanent. Now you could use Mod Podge, and it's going to be stiff, and you can't stitch it.
or
I wouldn't stitch it. I like the idea of the collage with fabric. That's something I'm really interested in doing.
And the good thing with that is you have so much more options of fabric than you do of paper.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could collage it like basic paper collage with fabric in Mod Podge.
Okay, Mod Podge would seal it at the end.
It would seal it, and you wouldn't have to do the iron on. And
yeah, I wouldn't do the iron on. That would be a whole nother safety issue.
Well, I've done the iron on. We've done story quilts. I've done it with my crafts kids. That was not the problem. They were pretty good with it. However, they aren't real good. I do have a ruined iron board cover where they didn't always use a transfer, or you see, I'm not using a piece of, I usually give them newsprint to put between the iron and their fabric so they don't hit the fabric with the iron, or the glue with the iron. And somehow they still do, or they accidentally glue the wrong side, or they accidentally iron it to the ironing board. So yeah, accidents definitely happen.
Yeah. What about adhesive backing that you don't need to iron? Would that be something that you would recommend? Like I used it for something before. It's like a sticky backing, and if you put the fabric on that and then let the kids cut it out and use it, that would work.
That would work for the first layer, but after a while, you would be fabric on fabric.
Oh, okay, right, gotcha.
Because as soon as I find my white that I got out for my eyeball, which.
Well, I like the idea of what you're doing. I love what you're doing, actually. So I think I would love to try it, but I would probably just be more apt to maybe doing, since you're layering a lot, I would just maybe just rely on the Mod Podge to hold it all together. Thank you.
There's lots of collage paper now that kind of looks like fabric that you could do if you didn't want to do the fabric.
I want the tactile feel of that fabric.
Right.
But the thing is, once you use the Mod Podge, it does kind of look like, feel like
paper. Yeah.
Paper. I did do, when we did the story quilt, they glued the images with the this on the panel, and that was fine for what they were doing. But they didn't stitch on top of it, so it will work. It's just not super permanent. And another thing that we did is, if you do it on white fabric, it's thin enough that they put it, like they had to do a hero theme, so they could trace with a Sharpie on the white fabric.
Mm-hmm.
The portrait that they were doing to put on their quilt and their pieces, so it kind of worked for that. But they did use a sewing machine for that, but only for the edges. Everything in the panel was either drawn, painted, or fused on, and it worked.
So when you say they traced their portraits, so they drew their portraits on paper, and then how did they trace it on, like a graphite method, or I don't know?
Actually, cheap
Paper.
white fabric on this bonding stuff, if they put it on the screen of their laptops, they could see right through it.
Okay. So so with that lesson, you didn't teach them how to draw the proportions of the face. They just, was it something that they used a photograph of, and then they use that? Is it like do a contour line drawing of that?
It's my crafts class, and they do not have to have Art 1 to get into crafts.
Okay.
So these kids may have never had drawing.
Okay.
And crafts, we're more about the process than we are about the art talent, I guess, is, you know what I'm saying? So I don't want to get bogged down with them being frustrated that it doesn't look like thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I would probably, because that's a big undertaking to do, self-portraits and trying to get the proportions right. So I don't know if I would even do that as well. I might just do like the contour line drawing of their face and just let it be a representation of them and not like a realistic, rendition of who they are.
Dawn, can you tell us again what is underneath the base fabric? Was it
This is just your quilt binding.
The
now,
batting?
If you're not
that's the batting?
yeah.
Okay.
What's it called? Yeah, cotton batting.
Okay.
And you don't need to use this if you're not going to quilt it. If your students aren't going to free motion quilt it. Like, you can see on the back where I stitched her hair and eyes with black. Everything else was white, but the whole thing, has been stitched. It's so hard to pick up on this. The whole thing has been stitched. So the, like some pieces like this, I don't even glue down because they're one of the last things I put on, and I can hold it in place while I stitch it. but if you're not going to stitch it, you've got to really make sure that, you know, like this isn't ironed all the way down, but I'm not worried because I'm going to be putting hair and everything on, and that'll hold it in place. So I guess I'm going to give her green eyes. Now I do sometimes, depending, you know, I'm trying to say what size eyeballs do I want. Sometimes I use this, but usually, again, I just freestyle it. And, you know, I keep it simple, almost cartoonish. So it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
And again, it's just the layers. So I put my eyeballs on.
I can't even wrap my brain around the freestyle sewing, machine sewing. I'm terrified of a sewing machine.
Well, my mom taught me to sew when I was 10, and I am now in my 60s. I used to make all my clothes, but I didn't free motion quilt until maybe 10 years ago when I took the graduate fiber class. This is my favorite fabric for pupils because I get my highlight built in. It might not be in the right place, but I get my little white spark.
Love that.
And it's a really easy fabric to find anywhere. Another hint is if you're cutting small pieces, and I'll show you that when I'm doing eyelashes. It's easier. You should always peel your paper off before you cut them too small, or you're going to be doing what I'm doing right here, fighting it sometimes to separate it. And of course, this one's probably needs to be pressed again. There, we got it.
Perfect.
And I don't always give my eyes the same color. I definitely don't do the same color eyeshadow on each eye. And sometimes this is where oh, there's my scrap I had aside from my eyeball. And of course, I picked up the one piece without stuff on it. So let me get another piece. So what I do a lot of times when I'm doing my eyelid is I find a scrap that has a curve in it. I mark with my fingernail or my pen. Cut out that eyelid. And again, you know, changing, I've seen people that do real round eyes and, you know, they look a little more animated. And this is one of those times when I grab the glue stick or a piece of the bonding because there wasn't any stuff here. And rather than stop and iron on a whole sheet of stuff, I use either the glue stick or the other stuff to put it there. And I literally have bags of small scraps, somewhat sorted by color. And then of course I have the stash behind me.
I wish we could see your stash.
I'm embarrassed to show you how bad it looks in here.
Doesn't matter, man. Stash is gold. Tracy would like to know, how many class periods does it take to complete this project?
Well, I have not, I'm going to do this well, last year was kind of, you know, we didn't do anything. I did the story quilts, and that was quite a few weeks. I'm going to do this project in paper, I think, with my crafts kids. But I'm also thinking about doing it in fabric as landscapes instead of faces, because then they can stitch a little on the sewing machine in just straight lines and pretty much hold everything in place. It really depends on their maturity level later on in the year. They could get better, they could get worse. You know how that goes.
How many sewing machines do you have in
How
class?
many self-contained or IEPs?
How many sewing machines?
Oh, sewing machines. Oh, I have 3.
Okay.
I think I got 2 of them from Donors Choose, because they're only like $120 each.
Are they easy to maintain with kids on and off them all the time?
So the way I did it was I had a table with the sewing machines, and they were just doing straight lines. So I sat with them while they did the first, and then most of them, they're scared to death of sewing machines.
Yeah, like me. I'm terrified, absolutely terrified.
But they all got the hang of it. And the funniest thing is I had this boy, we have something called Bliss, which is one of those behavior modification things. And he was a Bliss student. He was identified as an 8th grader as at risk. Bounced off the walls, but man, did he love to sew on the sewing machine. So he wanted to sew everybody's, and everybody, of course, was fine with that, because then they didn't have to do it. And he was fine with it. You know, I'd have to thread them, but like I said, I've been sewing for so long, that wasn't a big deal. They never broke it. Nobody ever got, if you're doing a regular stitch with, a regular foot, it's nearly impossible to sew your finger because it just doesn't fit. Free motion quilting though, I've gotten real close.
Yeah.
Because you can get your finger kind of up there. So I'm, like I said, you saw on this one, I peeled the paper off first because I'm doing my eyelashes, and I didn't want to fight with the peel and stick in the small piece.
That is so cute.
I have 2 questions.
Okay.
The first, for the sewing machines, how safe or how dangerous is it for using the sewing machines? Because I'm interested in it, but I'm also afraid of the sewing machine.
I get it. I'm terrified.
I've been sewing again all my life. In the classroom, I've used them quite a few times. But I keep it simple. Like this year, I have a stash of upholstery fabric. So they're definitely going to use the sewing machine to make little handbags, which is, 3 or 4 seams and a lining, or a pillow, again, 3 or 4 seams and a, and sew it together. And I'm very confident with that. the thing with the story quilt that worked out well was so many people were at different levels, you know, speeds, that I didn't have 30 kids waiting to use 3 machines. At the most, I had 5 or 6 kids waiting to use 3 machines. So it wasn't that big of a deal when it came to management. And I just sat at one table and managed them all. And, it, you know, it depended on the student. If they looked like they knew what they were doing, I would back away. But, you know, some students, I wouldn't leave their side. I mean, and, you know, just like everything, you had some students going, ah, 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 the whole time, like, just, you know, and it's like throwing on the wheel. It's the same thing. It's a gas pedal, just like you drive the car. And, you know, I say, don't go 55 miles an hour, just go 25. You'll be fine. And, you know, God bless us when these kids get their license is all I could say. But, you know, again, I use the analogy to driving, and, you know, I used to teach crafts. I started the crafts program, and then, you know, when things turn around and new teachers come in, sometimes crafts is the one that gets thrown to the newbies because they think it's you know, an easy class. And so I finally got it back. I fought for it and I finally got it back. So again, things have changed, you know. Lucky for history teachers, history pretty much never changes, but art, there's always new materials and new artists and new mediums and, you know, new smart people coming up with things to do. So you're always changing, you know. Oh, here's glasses I started.
And if we want to try using a sewing machine, do you think you could send us a link of like which one would be a good one? Because I don't know anything about sewing machines whatsoever.
I'll show you. I've got 2 machines here, and I'll show you those in a little bit.
Okay.
You need a PhD in sewing machine. Something goes wrong and you have to fix it, or
Well,
like,
if you want to just sew in straight lines, any machine will work.
right?
And that's what I said. If you're doing something like landscapes, you probably get away with curvy lines and just straight lines. I mean, you know, I mean curvy like wavy, but not like spirals. If you want to be drawing with the sewing machine, you have to be able to drop the feed dogs, which are the little tracks.
See, that's a whole other language you're speaking now.
Yeah, and I'll show you that in a minute. But that's the big difference, is you've got to be able to take the control of the speed away from the machine itself and you do it. Most machines, you can slow down and speed up the speed of the machine. Baby lock, I have one baby lock in my classroom.
Baby
and they
lock.
have a school edition. It used to be $200, but I think it's gone up pretty much. That one runs a lot slower than my brother's. And both of the brothers I have now, you can control the speed. But if you have somebody like I had, he knew how to change the speed and go fast. And if that's what thrilled him and he didn't hurt himself, then I was okay with it. That first nose looked a lot like a penis. I had to fix it.
I have a question about the fabric. Is your fabric very thin? It's not like thick.
Yeah, it's just cotton quilting fabric.
Cotton quilting fabric. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So I get it at Joann. You can even, the Walmarts here sell it in like prepackaged bundles now. Joanne sells it. Michael sells it in Richmond now. And then, of course, you have your quilting stores, which you're going to pay more for. Also, there's a company called fabric.com. And I used to order from them when I was doing some of, curtains. But I went to them to look at, during COVID and stuff, to look at prints. Well, when I clicked on the prints, it took me to Amazon. Now, for a lot of quilting fabrics, you are going to pay about $12 a yard at a quilt store.
Yeah.
But like I said, at Walmart, you can get $3 yard pieces, and you can get $5 pieces already cut and folded. Also, you can get for 99 cents fat quarters at Walmart, or it's probably gone up a little bit.
Michael's too. I think they're fat quarters and pre-folded.
Yeah. So, sometimes I look through there, but teaching, I've been at my school for 20 years. There's quite a bunch of fabrics where people have donated them. Like right now, my crafts kids are hand sewing the monster dolls, and I make those out of fleece.
Mhm.
And somebody brought me a whole bag of it because their mother makes the blankets, and she had scraps, and not a whole lot that I could use for the doll bodies, but it was, good for arms and legs and wings and stuff like that. There were some pieces that were bigger. So depending on your, resources, we also have a store here called Scrap RVA, and I'm sure every city has something like that. People donate their leftover art stuff.
Yeah, we have material for the arts, and we also have,
Yeah.
there's a place
And,
in New York City called Fabric Scrap.
Yeah, they have a fabric spree. I've never made it. It always is when I can't come.
Mhm.
And you can put out the word, at school, we want to do some sewing, we'll take your scraps. And I've sorted my scraps. I have upholstery fabric in a bin, I have cottons in a bin, and I have fleeces in a bin. So, they're all used for different things. But, as I'm working, you can see I'm just adding pieces, seeing what works, seeing what fits, looking at my scraps, I found I was more successful with the lips if I put down the white teeth first. For some reason, it's a little more forgiving if it doesn't fit right. Or if all else fails, you try and try again. You can get a whole lot more methodical with this if you take a portrait and put it in Photoshop and put it in cutout, and then you cut out each one of those patterns and put it together just like pattern pieces. So then you can get a whole lot more realism, and you can do it, kind of like a pop art.
Would you put the photograph of the portrait, the portrait on would they put the fabric on top of the portrait? Would you use that as a base?
No, I would do it more like a puzzle piece type thing, where they would trace the Photoshop or print out the Photoshop in black and white, or even do it in Google Draw where they do the mosaic type pieces.
Yep.
And then they can print each layer and use that as a pattern and put it together that way. And then you would be a little more close to realism. But something like this, you can still enforce the proportions. and not really be too wrapped up in photorealism, you know, because it's about expression. Another thing is I've seen a couple artists that do these in real Picasso-like format. So, you know, they're real mask looking. So that's just another option to go through, you know, to use for it.
Yeah, like Bisa Butler quilts, her quilts are very realistic
Oh my
looking.
God, hers are amazing.
Yeah.
But it's all, you know, what I like about these is I literally can sit down and put together 2 or 3 at a time. You know, I have like an assembly line. They all look different because, you know, I might pick up this piece and use it as a lip on one and a cheek in another and an eyelid on another and, you know, an earring in another.
How long does the sewing process take?
Well, I'm going to show you that. I'm really quick with that. Again. So usually when I get to this stage, I'm like, okay, what color hair, what color dress? And then I really start to, you know, if I want earrings, so I want to put some ears down and that kind of stuff. And, you know, my hair, like this one, I literally, one time, I got different prints of fabric and I ironed the paper to them, and then I was on a long car ride and I cut out all these individual flowers.
Wow.
So this girl, her hair was just these flowers arranged.
Can you show that again? That one that you just took away?
Oh.
With the hair with the flowers. Wow.
That's great.
That's so great.
This one, I just put the flowers in her hair.
So cute.
So, and I had one that I actually put a headband and then I made a ribbon to match. So she has, you know, a bow in her hair. Sometimes my hair is cut almost like, you know, just strips and I just lay it. Sometimes it's longer, it's just longer strips. And then sometimes, I mean, I literally sold 50 of these last week, so I'm running out. Sometimes I cut them into swirls and loops and kind of give them, you know, hair like this girl has, you know, but out of print. So it just depends on the look and that type of thing as to what I do.
So the previous one, you said you did what with the sewing on that one? The previous one? No, not the other one. Yeah. Oh,
so
wow.
this is just longer hair.
Oh.
It's just free form cuts and longer hair. None of these.
Those are great.
None of these are, sometimes I have the hair come over this edge a little bit. It just depends, you know, what I'm working on, where my mind's going, how much space I have. And sometimes I do that with the flowers also. This one, well, here's 2 more I have. I have done, it's hard to see, but
Oh,
this is a lighthouse.
That's
You
nice.
can see landscape. So you can see how doing something like this, the stitching could be done by machine and students because it's pretty much straight lines as long as you do the landscape part. This guy was all flowers.
Oh my goodness,
Love
adorable.
it.
that I'd cut out.
Love it.
Oh,
That one drove me crazy. This one I did a few years ago. It's all painted on fabric, and then I stitched on top of it. So it was one piece of fabric that I painted, and then I stitched on top of it.
oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah, I'm going to show you my sewing machine. So, let's see, put this over here to show the sewing machine. All right, hold on. Now, let's show you what I'm working on. So this guy is, I started a Santa. Somebody gave me Christmas fabric. This isn't typically my style, but I was like, oh, wait a minute, let's see what I can do. So you can see where I've started stitching him. I've done his eyes in black. I did his face in white, and I'm gonna do everything else in red. So, this machine, I bought myself a gift. This is a quilting machine. And basically, the only difference between a quilting machine and a regular machine.
So this is not a regular sewing machine.
Well, it is, but it has quilting features.
Okay.
I have a regular sewing machine too.
Mhm.
But the biggest difference is, well, I got it now, it's upside down. Okay.
There it is.
The features on a regular, the biggest difference in a regular sewing machine and a quilting machine is what they call the throat, and that's the distance here. And this one even has a longer bed this way. But my regular $200 brother has a sliding tray also. So these are the feed dogs right here. These little gears. Most machines now have a button that will lower them. Some of the older machines, you have to put a plate on it, or some of the cheaper ones. And you just put a plate so nothing's there. This is your free motion foot. It's got a round hole here. It's got a spring so that you've got a little bit of leeway in it, so it can go up and down if your fabric gets thick.
Okay.
So
That doesn't have feet. That's the free motion difference, right?
right, right.
Okay.
So now I'm gonna get real crazy here. I'm gonna try to do this with one hand. So I'm gonna put this at a medium high speed. And my foot's down. So all I do is I'm drawing with my thread. occasionally I see where I missed a space and I kind of have to go back down to where I missed. And then I'm going to go over to here and sew his shirt on. And when I do the backgrounds, I just kind of just do these little swirls. You can buy all kind of patterns and everything else, but I kind of sew like I draw, you know, real sketchy and fluid and contoury, so I'm not worrying too much. You know, this isn't like a professional quilt in that, you know, it's going on a bed and somebody's judging it. This is a drawing with thread to me, so I kind of attack it a little bit differently.
Right.
So that's the free motion quilting part.
The machine that you put on in the chat for $35, does it do that as well?
Wait a minute.
I think Julia Schickel posted that. It wasn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, I would say the regular brother that I have that I used to quilt on all the time, I paid like $200 for it.
Okay.
This one that I just bought myself, was $1,000.
Oh.
Wow.
I had a $4,000 Bernina and it died. So anyway, you can see, good Lord, how come, it's funny how you can't get things back in the chat. So you can see where I free motioned the red into his beard. I kind of picked that color for a couple reasons so you could see the stitching. And I would stitch the whole back. I put the backing fabric on it before I started free motion quilting. So when I get this all together, I put backing on it and stitch it.
Kathleen would like to know the name of the machine you're using.
This new one is the Pace Setter from Brother. And the other one is just the Brother CS6000. And that one I got on Amazon for a couple $100. And it worked fine. It's just that I started doing so many. What I really like is I have the other machine set up for straight stitching for all my bindings and piecing. And this is my free motion. Also, this one has a feature where I have programmed it to stitch my name.
Oh, cool.
So I'm like finally signing my work. Now, when it comes to finishing them, I don't trim, and I use, you know, the rotary cutter, or I've used a paper cutter to trim it. And how come I lost that? Oh, here it is. And I don't trim it until I finish all my free motion, because your fabric may stretch and skew a little bit while you're free motioning, because you are, you know, you're basically tacking it down. Then I just cut my edges. Then I cut binding strips. They're at about 1.5 inches. I put them on, press them over, and I hand stitch on the back. Let me find one that I just did. So you can see I sewed this on, you know, wrong sides, right sides together. I flipped it, and then this is all hand stitched in the back. It doesn't, you know, it's just one of those things I do in front of the TV, and I can knock out a bunch of them. You do one side, I mean, you do your sides, and then you do your tops, because you have to, you know, fold, you have to fold in your corner. My camera's not where I want. So you have to fold in your corners. Now, I used to, for big quilts, I would put in this rod pocket. And for really big ones, I still do. And you have to kind of do that when you're doing the binding. But this is hand stitched down here. So then you just put in a rod to hang it.
You do
Somebody
the
told
whip stitch for the back?
Huh?
Is that the whip stitch for the back of the binding?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then somebody showed me this, and this is so easy because there's no hand stitching involved, is when I'm sewing it together, I cut a square. Let me show you. I cut a square. I fold a square in a diagonal. This is bigger than this one has. And then I sew this in when I'm doing the binding. Now this one's a lot smaller, but it makes a little pocket. So of course I don't have a dowel rod in here, but you get a dowel rod that will fit in there and you can hang it up that way.
Oh, that's easy.
My super small ones, sometimes I sew a ring, but basically when they're real small, they're just going to hang up with the Velcro command strips.
Oh, okay.
Or you can even sew Velcro and give, you know, use the command strip on the wall.
Right.
But, you know, this thing has no weight to it. And the reason you put the rod pocket or the curtain rod in is so it doesn't curl and it hangs flat. But if they're super small, you're not going to have that problem anyway.
Right.
But I have started using this pocket on the back of all of them. This one's bigger. You can see it better. So all you would do is put a dowel rod in here. Now, if they want to hang it on a curtain rod, which a bigger one would have to be, you can use this on a curtain rod, or you can put a dowel or stick in there and put hook and eyes on there so they can hang it like a painting. So that's how I finish it. Now, I have done these as trading cards, you know, the little 2.5, and that's another thing. You could do them a lot smaller with students as little pieces or mini art, and then, you know, they might have more control with the iron and be less of a hassle. And then all I did was the embroidery stitch, the zigzag stitch. I did the trading cards on regular old pieces of felt, colored felt, and then I just zigzag stitch the seams. Some of them I fold over and bind, but some of them I just stitch and zigzag stitch the edges.
Oh, so you didn't use batting on the little trading cards. It was just felt as the base.
Yep.
Ah, that's
So
so.
if they're super small, you don't have to use the batting. You can just use regular old felt.
That makes total sense. And that might be a little more manageable for the classroom and hand sewing for those of us
Right.
who are
Right.
out.
Then if you keep them small,
Yeah.
and, you can, flowers are super easy. They can hand stitch, and you can incorporate embroidery into this.
Yes.
Like you could put it together on the fabric and no quilting, and then they can do hand embroidery, and that'll help keep the pieces permanently attached.
Right.
You know, if they did a flower, flowers.
Tracy's curious about the size of your pieces in general.
I keep my girls they're almost life size. What is she? She's a little smaller than life size, but some of, they're, oh, here's my ruler.
That looks like 12 by 12-ish.
This one's close to 12 by 12, yeah. Some of my other ones might be skinnier. and longer. So I just, I don't usually start out with the size. I see what fits. Sometimes I've made them bigger and then I end up cropping them, just like you would do in real world. My flowers have been this what, 18 by probably 20, 24. This one, that is it's just me. This one that's, in a vase. But I started the other one in the vase. And I've done them in the vase even smaller. Okay. So this one is this one's considerably smaller. Here we go. And I'm probably even going to cut some off of the bottom because I think I got too much tablecloth. But I could put some flowers or something here. You could also do fruit. A fruit basket or something might be easier for the kids. But if you did smaller pieces on felt, then or even without felt, you could do the hand embroidery. Like on the flowers, you could do running stitch and chain stitch and French knots in the centers for interest. And I've done that. I've even sewn beads into the flowers by hand. I mean, it's just a whole nother step. So there's different ways to adapt. If you are doing a person, I would do all of my free motion quilting before I did glasses, because you can't, it's just easier to put the glasses on after everything's been done, because then you don't have to worry about following lines and stopping in weird places. And again, I just pick up fabric and cut it out and see what happens. And sometimes they don't need glasses and sometimes they do. And sometimes they put glasses on them. This is glittered fake leather that I got in a packet of Cricut stuff from, and I'm like, I would never wear these, but it's thin enough that I could sew right through it. So that's how I gave her some bling. I mean, you could always bling them up with sequins and beads and that kind of stuff for the kids, or the kids might like it. Like I'm doing the monster dolls, and it's weird what some of the kids think. Like they think it's easier to sew a button on than it is to sew a circle of felt. So some of them have button eyes because they think that was easier than sewing the circle on. So you can make a lot of options with the students as to, to get their interest. And then, like I said, at the end, if I think they look plain, I, go through my bag of flowers and say, oh, does she need a flower in her hair? And this is when, like if I were to put this flower in her hair, I would definitely do it like this. And then I would free motion quilt on everything, making sure I don't sew my rod pocket together, and even have it hang off a little bit just because to break the plane.
Yeah.
A couple of them I put, lace on them, and that's caught in the stitch. You can't really iron that on, but you can, like I said, I've added bows and that kind of stuff to it too. So
Lisa's asking,
yeah.
Lisa's asking about what you did for story quilts, and if you have a lesson plan you could share.
Yeah, I think I still have it, not on this computer. So what I did with them was, I guess it was Black History Month. I didn't force the issue, but that's where most of them went. they had to pick an important person or event in history. So I got, I got a lot from the ladies at the astronaut. What were they? They just did the movie a couple years ago.
Hidden Figures.
Yes, I got a lot of them. Some George Washington, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, that kind of stuff. They had to come up with images and make them out of fabric and then fuse them to the white. They had a piece of 12 by 12 panel. So they had to fuse that to that. And that, like I said, sometimes I let them trace on a piece of scrap fabric the face or something like that, and then they iron that on. This was one of the projects that COVID got us. I got a lot of them finished, but not all of them, and then none of them got picked up. And then, it was go home, nothing gets put away, and then you get 3 hours to come back and clean your room for a year.
Mhm.
And so a lot of them didn't last. I think I still have a couple in my classroom. And then after they finished the white panel, I had lots of fabric strips, cut that were, this wide, all different prints. And again, they were from scraps that I had. If they weren't long enough for the 12 or 14 inches around, I seamed them so that they're like patchwork, almost like African look. And I just had lots of strips of fabric, and the students sewed those on with the sewing machine. And they did the top and the bottom, and then they pressed that open and did the left and the right. And that was their only sewing machine part of it. And like I said, they all did it. They all loved it. And some of the boys liked it more than the girls.
Student did one square, and would they have been sewn together, or?
I did sew 4 of them together for a Black History Month show.
Okay.
We in our county, we submit 1 piece a month to some shows, and I submitted 1 piece from my class, but it was actually 4 pieces put together. I had Landing on the Moon. That was one of the easiest ones because they could make an astronaut in a half circle and put all that together. They could paint, you can paint. Some of mine are painted fabric. This is painted fabric. So if you, like what I do a lot of times is, the little craft paints that you get for like $1 or less. When they run out, I put water in them and I dye fabric with them.
Oh, okay.
So that they got some body, but they're pretty much soft because they're not painted. So, and if the kids paint with a lot of water with acrylic paint, that's like one guy painted his son because I didn't have yellow fabric, or he didn't like the yellow fabric I had. So as long as they keep it, you dilute the paint, they can still press it, and you can even sew through it, because I sew through this on the sewing machine all the time.
Oh, it was acrylic watered down.
Yeah, I just
Okay.
watered down acrylic. I have a lot of the Peebo paints that are fabric soft. But like I said, I just add water to empty bottles and
Great idea.
use that.
Really great idea.
You can get enough out of that to dye some fabric thinly for that. It's kind of like what you do with paste paper. You take old ends of paint and tools and scraps and repurpose something. And what I end up doing is I get a piece of fabric and I squirt the watered down paint and I go like this, and it comes out, you know, this kind of, comes out this kind of almost tie-dye look,
Oh, cool.
because I'm just literally doing this,
Right.
and I wring it out in the sink. I'm on a campus school, so when I open my door, I'm outside. So yeah, our water grate is painted because I put stuff there to dry, and some of our trees are painted because I hang stuff from the limbs to dry. And then I put them in my drying rack. The thing is, if you put them on your drying rack, sometimes you get these neat grid patterns because the paint kind of settles,
Right.
which can work or not work. So that's a lot, you know, and you can, what I do like for my iron on stuff and for my muslin for school is, you know, I wait till the store has 40% off one cut piece of fabric, and I buy the whole bolt, and I get it for 40% off.
That's a good idea too.
So that's how I get my fusible webbing. I buy a bolt of it, and you know, I get it for
Say,
40
you
or
must go through a ton of that stuff.
actually I'm almost finished the roll I bought early spring, and I literally had 100 quilts.
Wow.
So between, you know, a little bit of glue stick here and a little bit of hemming bonding there, but it pretty much goes, like when I'm doing my flowers, I'm not particularly
It's okay.
worried if the paper goes all the way to the edge, because I'm just tacking it in place till I sew it.
Right.
Now, if you're doing something with your students, then you really want to make sure that, and they're not going to be sewing it, that you get it all the way to the end. And it's going to be permanent enough.
Right.
It's not for a hanging piece, it's not going to fall apart. If you put it on a shirt and it goes in the wash, eventually it's going to start to fray and fall apart. But for a quilted piece or for a face like I was started, it'll be fine. It's just make sure that you don't have frayed edges. And another thing that I learned the hard way is, like when we're doing the monster dolls, I pre-cut all the bodies on the paper cutter. You can cut fleece on a paper cutter, blanket fleece, into like 8 by 10, 8 by 10 pieces, because they made their pattern from a piece of copy paper.
Okay.
But when it came to those felt squares for the eyes and the nose and all that, I used to put out the big 9 by 12 felt squares. I don't understand the logic that if you have something like this and you want an eyeball, that you cut it out of the middle.
Yeah, and waste the whole piece. You know.
So what I do is nothing is bigger than this. I cut every piece of felt this size.
Yeah.
I have a stash of felt in the back. So if they want to make a dress or they want to make a wing, then I'll cut them a bigger piece.
Yes.
But I stopped giving them a felt square.
They all do.
So I would do the same thing with this.
Yeah.
Is if they were doing flowers, I would, and I work that way anyway. They would get a strip like this of a couple colors of blue, all pressed and ready to go. Again, your paper cutter will cut this, especially if it's already been fused to the paper. So you can easily put stuff like this whole piece has been done almost, and then take it to the paper cutter and cut it into smaller pieces.
Oh, that makes sense.
The kids won't waste it. And then you get boxes like this or Ziploc bags, and you can sort your pieces that way. And what I did this year is, you know, those little totes, their scissors, their felt squares, whatever color threads they are using are all in there. We labeled them by table, and that's their stash. I have a stash at my desk, but I tell them, if you want this pink for your lips, keep it in your stash. Because like I had a girl that found this one piece of orange and she cut out 3 eyes, and then she accidentally cut one eye in half, or somebody used it. And I was like, all right, I'll get you some more orange. And I looked at it and I said, this is not an orange I have ever seen. And I remember it, I ordered that felt on Amazon in a pack. So I went in my history and I ordered a new pack. And there's one piece of orange. There's, 40 colors like this, but there's that one orange in there. But it's not like I'm not going to use it.
Right.
And sometimes you find these on sale.
Yes.
They're pretty expensive, but if you find them on sale or you find them at a place, these are perfect sizes for flower petals and for binding or stripping, if that's what you're going to do. So those are just some of the savers to use them in class.
I wish I could make you a cup of tea, Dawn.
I know I got my Symbicort and albuterol in the house. I'll be doing that shortly. And then the prednisone will kick in and I'll be up again at 3 a.m, wide awake.
Wow. Thank you so much for, sacrificing your evening for us and sharing this. This has been really wonderful. So many ideas and materials, and I had completely forgotten that I have one of your little quilted ATC cards.
Oh,
Yeah.
I've done a few. So
Nice.
1 or 2 of them were actually bound, but a lot of them weren't.
I have some bouncing around in my head now. But
Did you show any of those trading cards that you were telling us about?
Mine are at school.
I might be able to show the one that Dawn made that I have.
Well, here's the one I did
Oh, nice.
that I didn't finish because I lost it. When I do the trading cards, I make like 8 because
Mhm.
sometimes I give one to Cheryl, or I just, in case one screws up. And I thought I made 8 the last time, and then I could only find 7, and then like 3 weeks later I found the unfinished one. So all I did to these was zigzag around the edge. And this isn't even felt. This is a piece of old upholstery fabric.
Oh,
So yeah,
wow.
you got one of my early ones that I actually bound.
Yes. I think I have your leaf also. The one you just showed us.
Yeah. And all this was scraps. Scraps with the iron-on stuff already on it.
Yeah.
And I just ironed it and then cut it out.
Is your leaf.
And then I free motion quilted my veins and zigzagged my edges.
I love it. And the back of it feels like
It's just a piece of upholstery.
it feels suede-ish.
Suede. Yeah, it's upholstery suede
These are so good.
that I made a pillow out of years ago, and there I found a scrap, and I'm like, oh, this is good.
Great.
So, but yeah, if you worked smaller with the students, you could incorporate sewing with embroidery on these. You can do the whole thing with the iron-on, as long as the whole thing is attached to the glue, and it'll stay together. It's not going to fall apart. And you can even frame them on stretcher strips. You don't have to, and for art shows, you can mat them just like paper. If you wanted to present them, they can be framed and put in mats.
Oh, everybody's leaving. Thank you guys for coming. Again, thank you so much, Dawn. I hope you feel better soon.
Yeah.
Sending you good health vibes and love and hugs.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It was awesome
Well,
tonight.
I'm
much.
so
It was
glad none
awesome.
of y'all started a fire while I was doing this. I
Well,
stomped out one. Of course, it was the day the first day I wore like a heel, a suede shoe to school. And I'm thinking, oh God, here's my shoes.
all right. I will, if anybody wants to rewatch this, I will be posting it by the weekend on our Nikata UFT YouTube channel. I almost short-circuited again. And we have our next session will be in 2 weeks. Lee Darter is going to be doing a session for us of scrappy animal sculpting.
Oh yeah.
Those are awesome. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving. And feel better, Dawn. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Good night.
Thank you. Good
Night,
night,
thank you,
everybody.
Dawn.
It was
Good
wonderful.
night.
Thank you, Dawn. Have some tea with that for that cough.
Yeah.
All right.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Good night, Steph. Thank you.